All right, perfect. All right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our first Tiger Talk of the semester. And so my name is Kayla Hubbard. I serve as the senior coordinator of Parent and Family Services. And I will let Heather introduce herself, and we will introduce Dr. Dale Williams to you all as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Heather Hampton, and I am the coordinator in Parent and Family Services. And I just want to say welcome, and we're so glad you all are here tuning in.
All right, and then our special guest for today is Dr. Dale Williams. So she is the director of the ACC, which is our Academic Counseling Center. And so Dr. Williams, if you would want to give the audience just a quick view of what you do on campus, and then we'll start with our questions.
Well, like you said, I am Dr. Dale Williams, the director of the Academic Counseling Center. And in our office, we have 12 academic counselors, and we see freshmen, transfer students, and pre-health students. So generally, any first-time student coming into the university, they will be in my office first. Those students will stay with us until they declare a major officially. Most freshmen will spend a year with us, and then they will declare their major, and then we will transfer them to the department that they have selected.
Awesome. So for our first question to get us started, when does advising start? Has it started? What's happening on campus right now?
Let me just say that registration starts November 14th. However, in our office, because of the number of students we see, we start advising like a month before. So we started really at the end of September, we started advising. That's just because of the number of the volume number of students, so that we can have the majority of the students registered by the 14th when registration opens. So we start early, so that if students want to pick their classes early, it won't be because they were not advised.
Okay, so now we know students should already be seeing their advisor right now.
They should be reaching out to their advisors, and advisors, they send campaigns out to students. And what that means is they send emails, they have the capability to send text messages, and they also will call. So it's not uncommon for them to get a call if they haven't reached out at some point.
Okay, so let's say there's a student that knows it's time for advising, but they need to know how to find out who their advisor is. How would they go about doing that?
So once a student initially makes contact with our office, so let's just say you have freshman students who sign up for orientation. Once they get to orientation, they find out who their advisor is, and then that's put into Navigate, and they can see that on their student pages in Navigate. For other students, maybe existing transfer, other students, if they are coming into the university will always communicate with them to contact the Academic Counseling Center for advisement. So their first step is to contact us. Once they make that contact, we will assign them to an advisor.
Awesome. And that kind of answers our next question. So we had a parent send in a question asking if her student should initiate that meeting or if it's a regular meeting. So students should initiate their meeting.
They should initiate the meeting, the first contact at least.
Awesome.
So for the advising meeting, one question that we get is, what options do students have for meeting with their advisor? Is it just an in-person meeting, or are there other options for meeting with that person?
No, they can ask for a Zoom, telephone, or email meeting. So any way they want to be advised. If they communicate better with just send me an email because I'm working and I can't fit, just you're taking online classes. And so if that is a better way for you to be advised, or we just send you an email, then we can do that. But we can really customize it to fit each student's needs.
That's good to know that there's a lot of flexibility in how you all meet with students.
Right.
Perfect. All right. Another question from a parent. So this one is about nursing. So is
nursing
my God 5 semesters? Do most students graduate in 4 years? And so if they have an incoming student coming in, maybe what are the prereqs? How does that work
Oh
within
my
with a freshman
God. So
student?
I cannot talk all of nursing in this setting.
Yeah.
Nursing has their prereqs listed on their website. Um, and the other question I think you asked was about the 4 years. Is it 4 years?
Mm-hmm.
Nursing has like a 4.5, like 4.5, like 4 in 1 semester because it is a set program. So you can, and they may be revising that, but right now, yeah, you can expect maybe to be, maybe it depends on when you also get accepted in the nursing program because you have to apply for that program. And like I said, all of their prerequisites, all of the courses and requirements are listed on their website. However, we have a pre-nurse advisor. So we have a pre-nursing advisor, and we also have a checkoff sheet. So once a student comes to our office, they'll meet with that advisor. They'll go over a checkoff sheet. On that checkoff sheet is like 10 things. We will go over every single requirement with the student. The student will then like check off saying, I understand this requirement, because you really have to know those requirements, which is why I don't want to rattle
Yeah,
them
yeah.
off. We go step by step. We're looking at the same sheet, the same information. The student is looking at it with us. We give that student a copy of those requirements in writing. And our expectation is that they know when the deadline is to apply for nursing. They know what the prereqs are, and they know what the GPA requirements are as well. So it's very, very serious, and it's very, very, you really have to be paying attention.
Awesome. Well, that sounds good, and sounds like y'all have the steps to set them up for success to apply to nursing school.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
And because they only take a limited number. So, you know what I mean? You could have 400 students who qualify, but it doesn't mean that 400 students will get in. And so we always tell students and parents that, you may want to have a backup plan. And so you need to kind of be researching other avenues and pathways you can take in the event that that first one doesn't work out. But you can reapply. So just because you don't get in the first time doesn't mean you won't get in. But there are other ways of taking that path as well.
So, what typically happens during the advising session, and how can a student best prepare for their meeting with their advisor?
So your first year, you're kind of taking gen eds, right? But school is not as boring as when I went to school. Like you might have one choice, you have like one history course you can take or two. Now you might have like 5 or 6 history courses that you can take. And so really it helps if the student kind of has an idea of the courses that they're interested in. Like if they look at some of the courses prior to the advising appointment. And also, you're not just having an advising appointment to select your courses, you also have to declare a major. So it helps if the student has done some research about the different majors, what the university has to offer, because it's a lot. And so just because they come in and they may not know, it's the students job as well to say, hey, I'm interested in this, and you can go out and talk to other departments and other advisors that you may have interest in their areas. And so they have to be a little bit investigative. So that will help them a lot if they, if they certainly don't know, if they just become a detective, so they can just kind of figure out what the university has to offer. And of course, we just wrapped up Discover Your Major Day, but it's one day. So now they made that initial contact with those different departments. Now it's time to go see what scholarships they have, what opportunities, internships, and anything that department may have to offer.
Gotcha. And going based off that, is it pretty easy to change a major? Let's say a student went to Discover Your Major Day and they are now really interested in physics. Could they talk to their advisor about that, about either changing their major or adding a minor? How would they start that process?
So students who already have a major, if they are in that department, will have to complete a change of major form. So, and then they will be transferred to another department, and they not necessarily have to go through us to do that. They can do that right there with their current advisor. For our freshman students who are our students who kind of stay with us for a year, the point of them staying with us at least 2 semesters before we hand them off is to just make sure they have that major kind of written in stone. So they may come in and say, hey, I want to be a English major. Well, they may not get transferred until they finish that first year. And then by that first year, they will know if they needed to make changes, they'll kind of know. But if they do need to make changes and we have already transferred them out or something like that, it's just an easy fix. We can reroute them to the right person. So it's never a big deal. I guess that's what we're trying to say. If you need to change your major. However, the first year or so, you're taking gen eds. And so most gen eds, not all, let me clarify, not all gen eds will apply to certain majors, but as you become a sophomore or upperclassman, you really need to, so that you can be in school only 4 years, you really need to know what you want to major so that you don't have to take extra courses, so that you can go straight into your major and start working on those courses that apply to that major, because you don't want to go and start taking all these psychology courses and then figure out that you want to be in physics. And then now you've got to, you can use some of those courses as electives, but again, physics may have a whole nother, hours that you have to complete. So you want to make sure you're not wasting time and that you decide early. And that's why investigating is so important, because the earlier you decide, the more you could be going into that direction. You could take a class here to see if you're interested in it or things like that.
So it sounds like they need to do that so they won't waste time or money.
Exactly.
Right. Can you explain? This kind of is something that I've heard parents ask about, the course plan of study and how advising plays into that. Because we were talking a little bit about wasting time, not really knowing which way you want to go, having to take extra classes. And that brought to my mind course plan of study. And
So some majors have a set schedule, like communications and fine arts, engineering. Some majors starting their freshman year may have a set schedule, and those are students that we wouldn't advise if they have a set schedule like that. But most of the time, there are required courses that you have to take within a certain period of time. Thankfully for us, you have about 41 gen eds that you have to get through. And typically you can get through those within 3 semesters or more, depending on how many, or less, depending on how many classes you take. So you can't really go wrong if you stay within the gen ed course of study, like and so we might give you an English, a math, a social science, a fine arts, and you know what I mean, something like that. But just a set schedule. That's why it's important that the student kind of know what they want, because they're not going to get that preset schedule. But they can determine how many classes do I want to take per semester. And they can decide, well, do I want to take math and English together? They can decide their classes based on their strengths and weaknesses in terms of how they're pairing their classes. And so those are the type of conversations that they have with their advisor. And that's why advising is so important, because some classes may not pair well together. So, but they like, if the university is requiring 120 hours, how many hours do I need to take per semester so that I can graduate in 4 years? So all of this is pre-planned. So those are the type of things that a student has to kind of plan for. Even financial aid will, if you have issues with your financial aid, let's say you fail a class, they may come back and say, hey, we need a plan of study and tell us from here on out if we're going to fund you, how you're going to take these classes. So they have that capability and navigate to kind of like plan your schedule, especially when you get with your major advisor, like what are you going to do each semester?
Awesome. And then thinking about hours as well, if a student comes to their parents during Thanksgiving break and say they're taking, 22 hours with a full-time job and in multiple organizations, do you have any advice for that? Like how many hours may be too many for a freshman student, or Does
Typically,
it depend on the student? Yeah.
well, yeah, typically we would tell a student to take 15 to 16 hours. That's doable.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to have a life. And if you're an online student, it can be different from being an on-site student. So if you're an online student and it's very heavy and based in reading and writing, then the more hours you take, the you know what I mean, it can be very time consuming. And what you have to explain to students is really not a, it's not that you're not smart and you can't take 22 hours. It's just that it's time consuming and you don't want to burn out. So typically we would to be a full-time student, you would take 12 hours. That's about 4 classes. But if you need to drop a class and you do have the option to drop a class that just doesn't work for you, then you can't drop a class if you only took 12 hours. So that's why we would recommend 12 hours, because we want you to have some wiggle room. But if you took 15 to 16 hours, statistically we know that that's a realistic plan. And then if it's not, you still have room to drop a class. We do have students that are just rushing to get out and they may take 18, or they may ask for permission to take more hours from their advisor. Um, it does depend on the student, but it's not recommended, because then you kind of lose the quality of the class, because now you're just trying to get it all done. You're not really retaining the experience so much. But there are a lot of factors involved. So it is a case by case, but just generally on the average, a new student coming in, we would just keep them at 15 to 16 hours per semester.
That's awesome. Thank you. I know I teach a ACAT class, and we were talking about schedules, and they were talking about building theirs up. And I said, wait a minute now. I understand
Yeah,
I want to graduate, but
yeah. And it's so many factors to that. If you're going to
yeah,
build it up with fluff, that might be one thing. But if
right.
you're in your major classes,
Mhm.
and that you're putting yourself at risk. And another thing with students, like your first 2 semesters really sets the tone for your GPA. So you want to hit that GPA hard those first 2 semesters. After those first 2 semesters, the GPA just seems like it won't move up or down. So you can't, it's like you got to hit the ground hard, set the pace, go ahead and get that 4.0, so that when you get into your harder classes as you become a junior and senior, you have some wiggle room.
So, what happens if a student does not meet with their advisor?
Oh, they can't register. That's all. Just won't be able to register. Your advisor clears you. We call that clearing your pen, so that you can register. And so each student here is required to meet with their advisor. We don't want you floating out there by yourself, advising yourself. Although you're wonderful, you're great, you're lovely, but everybody needs help, and we want to give it. And so if a student refuses to meet with their advisor, they won't get cleared and they won't be able to register.
Awesome. Do you have any advice going into, when advising is about to start for parents? Any things that they can say to their student to nudge them? Or is it basically like tell them to go to advising so
You
they can
know,
create their schedule?
a lot of times we want students to work with us. So like we
Mhm.
may say, hey, here are the classes that we recommend. A student will come in and say, well, my mom said that I need to take X, Y, and Z. But things may have changed since the last time your mom was a student. And so we need the parent to work as a co-pilot and know that we have the best interest also for the student, and we want to come to a common ground together,
Mhm.
so that the student doesn't feel conflicted. So we get that a lot, where the student really, even in majors, the student may want to major in one thing and the parent may want them to major in something, and they're not successful because that wasn't their interest in the first place. So really just allowing the parent to be a co parent. Now we have parents come in sometimes with their student, I mean with their child, but because of FERPA laws, we have to have permission of the student if the parent is involved in that way. We can't exclude the student and talk directly to the parent. So when they get to this stage, we really want them thinking independently. We're going to present some choices, and we need them to make the best decisions based on the information that they're given. And so I would just say, if I were a parent, yes, be concerned, be involved, but also get, just if you have to negotiate or if you have to talk or communicate with the advisor, just do it with the student where you come into a common ground.
Awesome. Heather, do you have any other questions? I think that is great advice, and also some things that parents may have heard also at New Student Orientation in the summer. So it's very timely coming back, together now to help your student.
Yeah, because in orientation this year, they sent the students by themselves and the parents had a workshop. And so the students, they went to their advising appointment by themselves. And so that's just something that, again, that you can discuss prior to getting to that advising appointment, that may be helpful to the student, because it can be very confusing coming out of a very structured environment into an unstructured environment where now you got to make all these choices, and choices are difficult, right? People can't make choices. They have too many of them. So sometimes it can be difficult for students to just pin down things.
I would like to ask a question really about some of the tools that students have to use.
Oh my gosh.
I know you've mentioned Navigate.
Yeah.
If we could talk just briefly about that, and then maybe some tools that they use to keep track of their progress. In my mind, it's always been, kind of a responsibility of the student to take some ownership in the progress toward the degree, and of course with the support of the advisor and the professors and the parents. But what kind of tools are available for students to use?
So students, you're definitely right. Everything that they kind of need are in Navigate, even kind of tracking their progress, especially if they're taking online courses. All of that is in Canvas as well, so they can kind of see how they're doing in courses. I would say also, and students really don't like to do this. They like to email a lot. But if that professor or has office hours, and you need clarity about an assignment, it's good to make that one-on-one contact with your professor. It shows that you care about the course, that you're serious about your academics. And that goes a long way. And we don't really live in a society where people like to meet one-on-one. A lot of students, like, you may send an email like, I don't understand my grade, but it's easier if you can just have a face-to-face conversation and talk to the person about it. Also, keep up with your test scores, and keep up with withdrawal dates. So for instance, if you're failing multiple tests, then I know it's very difficult because some people don't want to withdraw, but you kind of need to do the math. Do the math. If you're the professors have the option to put in a midterm grade, but a lot of them don't. So a lot of students may not know where they stand in that class, but do the math. How many tests are we going to have throughout the semester? If we're going to have 4 tests and I failed 2, that means you have a 50% chance of passing this course. So you have to really, it's a lot of thinking that you have to do to be successful. You have to really kind of weigh. And then if you just don't know and can't figure it out, again, reach out to that professor. And I would say email is always read in a negative tone. And you have to realize that when you're communicating just by email, you don't know what tone that person is reading that email in. And that's why in person is so important, because you could be so sincere in asking a question, but it may not be read by that person that way. So it's always good to meet in person, follow up in email. And if you're an online student, I realize you can't meet in person, but it's always good to flower your email. How are you? Hope your day is going well. I had a quick question, just things
Mhm.
like that. We have to learn because you don't want to anything to be misconstrued. So those are just a few tips that may be helpful to students as they're trying to navigate that space.
Awesome. And even Zoom meetings is what I thought about too, even for online students.
Yeah,
I
if you
know
could
with
do a
my online
Zoom
classes,
meeting, yeah,
my
call for a
professor will
Zoom
Zoom
meeting.
me in 5 minutes and we're having a
Yeah,
conversation and that's the end of it. So usually a lot of people like
absolutely.
that too.
Right. Just having that, so that that person knows that you're a real person
Uh-huh.
on the other side of that email. I mean, that's important.
Yeah.
And you will get sometimes a totally different response.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, I think that may be all the questions that we have from parents, Heather, unless I'm missing one that you see. But just want to thank you so much, Dr. Williams, and thank everybody who is watching. If y'all have any questions, feel free to comment it below. Also, we will share Dr. Williams' contact information. And so if you have any questions for the Academic Counseling Center, we can get you in touch. But we appreciate your time for sure.
Thank you so much for the invite. I'll
Awesome.
see everybody for advising soon.
Yes, sooner than later.
Goodbye.
Yes, yes. All
Awesome.
right. Have a good day. All right, you guys.